and the Guggenheim is floating over it. And depending on how you take it, it can be scary or a positive take on the museum. This leads me to 3 projects that I want to show you briefly. I'm not sure how much time I have. The first one is a show that is opening in May called Future. Well, the artists are called Future Farmers. The show is called Intervals, and it's part of a series in which we ask people to find a residual space in the museum and do their project there. As my program is developing to be much more about cities than about the museum space, I asked them to do something very small in the museum and take it out into the city. And what they came to me with is this poster. One of them is Flemish, and this poster says, "The revolution begins with the soul." And I was intrigued and surprised and was wondering what it was about. And they said, "We're going to develop a project for you which is about the relationship between the sole of your shoe and the soul of you." I was like, okay, let's see what that in-between space becomes. What they're doing for us, after submitting hundreds, literally, of these images of cobblers' benches from around the world, they're creating a cobbler's bench for the Rotunda space in New York. And this cobbler's bench is going to be the location, the hub, the anchor for all of the programs taking place in the city. They will be making shoes here, using shoes, putting shoes on with people. And these shoes are special shoes because you can print with them. What you print with is a special ink that they're creating. And it's a little bit of a romantic story, but I don't think that's wrong with any poetry every once in a while, especially if you see those political situations happening. They're creating ink out of soot, and soot is the sidewalk dirt. They're mixing this with honey and eggs, and then you apparently get an ink. So it's ink harvested in the city, used from the city sidewalks. And they're collecting this with people from the city. They're printing on these large rolls that you see here on this piece of paper, and they call this the pedestrian press. Here outside on the street. The idea is that they go out on the sidewalks a few times during the show, invite people to join them in printing these texts. And the texts are being written by one, Rebecca Solnit, who I just referred to in the Field Guide to Getting Lost, and 2 other writers who are each focusing on this relationship in between the soul and the soul. They're really beautiful texts, and if you should be in New York in early May, come by, and otherwise check out our website because it will be a pleasure to read. As you see, this is very different from the big monographic shows that we had been doing before, but it's very much dealing with space and with the urban spaces. The second project that I'm running at the moment, which is opening in June, and that will be interesting for a next situation like this, is called Still Spotting. And for Still Spotting, we're looking at silent locations in the city. In this case, we start with 2 educational components. The first one is Columbia University. Their Spatial Information Design Lab is running a series of research sessions, as well as seminars, that are being turned into these maps that map silence, but also stress, noise, visual noise, and also the noise of social media, for instance, in New York City, as a basis for artists to work with. The second educational component, after I click to a few of these early maps that are still in development at the moment, is a series of videos that are being created by students of SVA, the School of Visual Arts. And for me, it was important to get this next to the maps, because the maps gives you that sense of truth, as I explained that earlier on, which I'm not always convinced of. But these videos give you a totally different sense of what silence in the city can mean. Also, these are currently in development, and it will be done in the next month. The project itself is taking place all over the city. The 5 boroughs, we're repeating Manhattan twice, or we're repeating Manhattan once, so we do it twice. Which is interesting for us, because we're usually known as this institution that stays on 5th Avenue or in one of our other buildings, but we're very interested at this point to get out of that building and see what is happening around us in the city. We take 2 long weekends to explore this for each of the artists that we work with. And the first artist is Pedro Reyes. Pedro Reyes, great artist from Mexico City. I won't talk you through all of the projects here on the slide. These are reference projects. But the project at the lower left corner is interesting. And it was for me the reason to invite him. What Pedro is doing here, he has requested to people in one of the most dangerous cities in Mexico to deliver their guns with the idea that, okay, there may all of these drug wars going on, but perhaps start at a more poetic way, or start looking at life more poetically. Deliver your guns. Pedro used the metal from those guns to create spades, and the spades are currently used all over the world to plant an equal number of trees, equal number to the number of guns that he collected. And again, as the Future Farmer projects, this is somehow slightly romantic or poetic, but I think it gives you an interesting take on cities. What he's doing for us, I'm going to launch in 2 weeks, so keep an eye on that, but it will be an interesting, quiet, and I think also fun take on what one of the key characteristics of New York City. And the last project that I want to show you here, and sorry that BMW showed up everywhere, although I'm sure that they don't mind, is the BMW Guggenheim Lab. BMW approached us roughly 2 years ago when I first started at the museum for a large project. They're big advocates for architecture. They've done some serious architectural projects. This is their Leipzig plant designed by Zaha Hadid. And they wanted to look at a different type of project. And that's interesting because at the same moment that we were figuring out what we were going to do with architecture, they were doing the same thing. They allowed us to develop a new program, which is called the BMW Guggenheim Lab, which will be a combination between a think tank, a community center, and a gathering space. And I'm showing you sketches right now because the project is opening in August, and we're launching all of the final materials in early May. So I'm a little careful to show you too much at this point, but I think these are interesting to give you a sense of the framework. How the project is organized, as you see, it's a dotted line here. And the dotted line represents the structure of the lab. It's a building that we create that is being put up on the Lower East Side. I will show you that in a minute. Or actually the edge in between the Lower East Side and the East Village in New York City. And it will become a space where we run a program that we've not run before, a community program that is much bigger than all of our educational programs ever. The lab is designed by one architect, the guy dressed here in black. We have graphic designers, which I will show you in a moment. I'm one of the 2 curators, and we're supposed to wear polka dots, apparently. And then you have 4 lab members in each of these labs. And the lab members are from different fields. It can be economists, scientists, academics, architects, designers, artists. And for the first lab, we have a pretty good mix, I think. But the most important thing, and that's why you see so many of them here, is really the community that's coming to see these projects here in the gray outfits. We're executing this scheme 3 times in 3 different cities. First one is New York, and the other 2 are being launched in just a few weeks. Then we bring all of the results back. The people work on one coherent theme, which is confronting comfort. And that's all the results, all the research from those months in the cities, in the 3 different cities, is being brought back at the end of the loop to New York City, where we'll show a small exhibition in the Rotunda. The architects that we selected, even though it's perhaps not even the highlight of the project, because I really hope that the audience is going to be the highlight, are a personal highlight to me because they're a pleasure to work with. Atelier BIlbao from Japan. This is their office, and to give you a sense of their projects, although I'm sure that most of you know them actually. This is a project they did in Busan, Korea, a moving classroom. Was one of the inspirations for us to invite them. And the second one, this white limousine Yatai, which is normally a small cart as you see there on the left, but they stretched it up. They have a lot of humor. They stretched it up and created this long structure that they can move around in the urban areas as well as right outside of it. The graphic designers that we chose, Soo Kim Min from Korea, very beautiful work, very quiet. This is the only thing I can show you right now. I'm sorry for that, except for this last shot. And this is the site that we're using, which looks like a big rubble pile here, and it literally is. It's a dirty site. It's something that people are not used from the Guggenheim. This will be an interesting project for us because it allows us to start working with communities in this strange space in between buildings, but also in between notions of scale, notions of urbanism, and so on. And I hope that you will be able to join us for this either in New York or in one of the 2 other cities over the next 2 years. Thank you very much.